Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon, Bootleg Edition. So, I did a video recently, a little 60-second snippet about why I thought that this article about the top ranking episode series, I should say, of Star Trek was pretty much inaccurate. So, I figured today I'll do my rundown of my top list, beginning with the worst all the way up to the best of Star Trek series, and a little bit of why I believe they are where they are. So I figured I would start with all 13 Star Trek series, and yes, I did say 13. And I know some people right now saying what in Deep Space Nine, but listen, there's going to be a reason why it's 13. So just bear with me and let's get started. All right, starting at the bottom of our list, we have Star Trek Discovery. All right, now listen. Why do I say Star Trek Discovery is at the bottom of my list? Anybody who has seen Star Trek Discovery will know why Star Trek Discovery is at the bottom of the list. First of all, you're going to start the whole season, the whole series off, first episode, with a first officer that is mutanting, right? Mutanting. Get her Captain Kill, start a whole war with the Klingons, right? And ends up going to jail. But let's not go into all that. She gets called back into Starfleet, right? And ends up becoming captain of a whole prototype ship. Spore Drive. Get out of here with that. Now I could spend this whole episode just ranting about just the type of Mary Sue Michael Burnham is. Like she just does it. Look, she's so much of a Mary Sue that I don't even know anybody in the whole crew. It's almost the fourth season of Star Trek Discovery, and its crew members on the bridge that I have absolutely no idea who they are. Terrible story, inconsistent, terrible writing. Like the whole arc of the whole series was just jacked up no matter what season you go through. And let's not even get into the space tentacle ships, or the Orion lady who don't look like an Orion lady, or the turbo deck, the turbo the turbo lift fight scene with all that space in it. Look, then you guys have a chance to reboot it. Y'all travel all these years into the future, man. And then even that story arc, the Great Burn, man, for real. And it ends up being some little dude on a dilithium world. Man, look, I just do not like Discovery. At number 12, you have Star Trek Prodigy. Now, this is what I like to liken to as they seen the fan-made Star Trek Renegades series and was like, hey, stop that, cease and desist. But we gonna do something like that, make it in a cartoon form. Now, the art was great. The characters were interesting, right? It's just that the story was terrible. It was terribly executed. It took too long to even get going. And then trying to make like this connection between Future to Kote and man, like Janeway, and then hologram Janeway, and then where's everybody else who's supposed to be operating this ship? Like, how's the ship supposed to be operating with just these people, man? Like, look, overall, it was just convoluted. It was just long, boring, and convoluted. At number 11, you have Star Trek Picard. Look, let's not even get into the first season. Matter of fact, that's why we're here. Let's get into the first season. So we're going to start the first season off with Icheb getting killed. 7 and 9 not even being part of Starfleet. Let me tell you something. The Federation would never let 7 and 9 just run off being a ranger somewhere with all the stuff that she knows, contributions that she has made, in the Borg technology that she has weapon within her. Then just how they was treating Admiral Picard. How Admiral Picard was treating itself. And so now you got these two androids, right, who made after Data, right, because what was his name? Commander Maddox had got some of Data's cells that had been floating out in the middle of space, after the explosion in the Nemesis movie, right? But he was still able to get enough of Data to make these things. Oh yeah, and then y'all got this relic that's a Borg ship, right? That we waiting all season for the Borg. We can't wait. We can't wait for the Borg to be activated. And when the Borg get activated, y'all just blow them all out into space. Well, come on. And then talk about, all right, this one android girl gonna get all upset and everything and decide, hey man, we gonna contact the super androids that's gonna come over to the Alpha Quadrant galaxy, man, just destroy everybody, man. And then the portal closed. The portal closed. So that's it, man. That's it of that. Then you gonna kill Data again? Like, come on, really? And then you trying to tell me Q gonna die? We don't know why Q died. He just getting old Q. Q, the immortal Q. That's actually his whole title, the immortal Q. Look, and that's what we're doing. And then Guinan, look, oh my God, season two. Look, it got better. It got better. That's probably why it's not Lord and Prodigy. And number 10, we got Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Now, listen, I had a lot of high hopes for this one when it came out. And I'm going to tell you, they've been a lot of good episodes and a lot of bad episodes with this. But the thing is with me, man, what they're doing to canon. So, first off, you're going to make your main antagonist the Gorn, which is a species that in the original series, people ain't never really ever even seen, but y'all got a whole situation going on with them, forgetting the fact of the episode. What was it, the arena? Come on, people. Let's not get into Spock's character and how he's portraying Spock. Like, sometimes the writing just be trippy. Like, for instance, Nurse Chapel and Spock, that whole relationship, did they even watch the original series? However, they are rocking with people like Uhura and Mbenga and the pilot. I keep always forgetting her name, man. Ortega's, right? And you got people like Laan Nguyen Saint, and that's another thing too, man. First of all, you're gonna make a person that's related to one of the most legendary characters in all of Star Trek, knowing that he's an augment, and you haven't showcased none of that within Laan, because that wouldn't be a violation of Starfleet. She was born this way. So what's going on with this? Another standout is Rebecca Romaine Stamos as number one. But I'm gonna have to say, Strange New Worlds takes too many liberties with Star Trek canon. Maybe they just need to get their foot in the door just a little bit more. But hey, at least I know the crew, and I still think that that musical episode is still going to be a classic. It's going to be a classic. At number 9, you have Star Trek: The Animated Series. Now, some of the standouts of this particular series is, of course, that the cartoons were voiced by the particular actors who played those characters. It expanded a lot upon Star Trek canon and in the Star Trek universe. All right, but however, the drawings, I couldn't really get into it, even though I used to watch the Flintstones. I also like that certain other characters from Star Trek canon, especially the original series, or only the original series, were brought over into the animated series as well. Certain Cleons and stuff, for instance, people who would later become Daha Masters. And number 8, you have Star Trek Lower Decks. That's right, people, Star Trek Lower Decks. First of all, I love the fact that they took a concept of Lower Decks from the Next Generation and decided to make children's type of anime or animation about it. They have a memorable crew. I think it's hilarious. The Easter eggs, callback, the tributes and guest appearances of characters from all over the series. One of the greatest strengths that I have found of Star Trek Lower Decks is this ability to bridge the gap between all of the series. Usually in a wacky, sometimes compelling, but most of the times overall funny way. They even have a Darmok and Jalad and Tanagra security officer, right? But they've also been really good at telling compelling stories and thought-provoking stories. Also, they have one of the best crossovers that I've seen in Star Trek, besides the Trial and Tribulations, was when they switched roles over with Strange New Worlds. I thought that was a great episode as well. This series focuses on what happens after first contact, after the happenstances of things like when the Enterprise shows up and decides to just leave a planet. Are they left alone? No. We have follow-up ships, follow-up dignitaries and things, and trade and agreements that need to be made. And this ship right here, the Cerritos, is the ship that decides to do that. And anybody who can include the Packleads, we look for things that make us go. Into their main storyline is always a good for me. And number 7, we have Star Trek Enterprise. Now, usually the thing with prequels that I don't like is prequels, who wants to, develop over time with a character, man, see him get up to power level of over 9,000, and then the next time you see them, it's not a continuation of that, how they develop after that. It's, hey, man, this is how they was before they was all super powerful and before how you really knew them. But Star Trek Enterprise doesn't suffer from that particular dislike of mine. Through to Paul, one of the finest Vulcans ever put to screen, right? They explore so much of Vulcan lore and Vulcan mythology, the formation of Starfleet and the United Federation of Planets. how Starfleet vessels evolved over time, man, to get shielding and to get offensive weaponry, things of that nature. Our relationship with the Vulcans and how over 100 years it seemed like the Vulcans held us back. We go into the Andorians, one of the founding members of the Federation, man, and their lore, man, especially through one of the another great character, man, Shran. We also see one of the first and most deadly attacks on Earth ever carried out in Star Trek canon. I loved a lot of the stories that they covered. One of the best stories and one of the best arcs is the Temporal War that's gonna someday make a move in Star Trek canon. Number 6, Star Trek Voyager. Now, I could stop at 6 of 9, who I lovingly refer to as, I'm sorry, I could stop at 7 of 9, which I lovingly refer to as 6 of 9, or how Voyager gave us our first female captain, even though I sometimes refer to her as the Dread Pirate, the Dread Pirate Janeway. But Voyager also gave us Neelix, Black Vulcans, a hybrid Klingon besides the one that Worf was fooling around with, Alexander's mother, a convict as a pilot, Lord of the Marquis, an ensign that would never get promoted. Voyager was great at spouting Starfleet and Federation ideals one episode and purely breaking them the next episode. It showed what a person and a crew would have to do to see a journey so far ahead of them and wondering if they'll be able to make it. It showed us the Delta Quadrant and everything new that came with it. But Voyager also destroyed the Borg after the episodes Scorpion 1 and 2. But it did replace it with Species A47 too, so I mean, you can't really gripe about that. But they did jack up Species A47 too later on in the series, so, well. But Voyager, during this run, had some great, great stories, even some that linked to things going on in Deep Space Nine and in The Next Generation. And unlike Star Trek Discovery, Voyager, again, we know their crew. We know they struggle. Number 5, Star Trek, The New Voyages. Now listen, here's the thing, people. At the time, Gene Roddenberry did not mind. As a matter of fact, he encouraged fan books, fan literature, and everything like that around the Star Trek mythos. As such, I too will pay homage to when I find something that is done in such a great spirit of Star Trek that I have to acknowledge it. This series focuses around the TOS crew, reenacted by, of course, fans, but the production, the design, the acting, all of that stuff is top notch. They even got special appearances by certain TOS actors. One of my favorite episodes was from season 4, episode 3, entitled World, Enough, and Time. Look, if that episode don't bring a tear to your eye and is done in such the spirit of a TOS episode, I don't know what will. Number 4, Star Trek Continues. All right, this is another fan-made production, but when I say it's a fan-made production, you would never know it. From after about the first 10 minutes of season 1, episode 1, you will lose track that you are even watching a fan film production. Star Trek Continues has the top-notch writers, top-notch acting, familiar faces. Man, look, it basically has everything. When I watch Star Trek Continues, it's just it basically, the stories in Star Trek Continues are stories that we were familiar with. They were written for the TOS, but they could do continuations. For instance, one of the ones was when they ran back across Apollo. Yeah, the Greek god Apollo, played by the original actor. Look, if you haven't seen it, check it out. All right, people, we are getting into the home stretch, man. We getting down to the nitty gritty, man. We getting down to the trifecta, all right? And then at number 3, we are going to have Star Trek TOS, the original series, people. Yes, the OG Star Trek itself. Now, it's said that Gene Roddenberry considers TOS non-canon, right? But the thing is this, everything is based off of TOS. TNG series is based off TOS. Every series is based off the things that happened in TOS. If that's the case, how can it not be considered canon? It was the base. It was the template. It taught us the prime directive. It taught us IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. It taught us optimism, love, and respect for our fellow man. It gave us the idea that one day Earth would become a utopia. Also gave us one of the captains with the most temporal incursions ever put to canon. Speaking of captains, look, this is the pan ultimate legendary crew. Everybody is familiar with everybody who is on the Enterprise. Some people is familiar with Security Officer Red Shirt number one. From Spock's grounded acting to Kirk's overacting to Bones' sympathetic acting, the way crew members played off one another, man, the outstanding and legendary stories, man, like City on the Edge of Forever, Best of Both Worlds. Oh no, Best of Both Worlds was Star Trek. What was it? The Next Generation. You know what I mean. But Balance of Terror. Yeah, that's not. Speaking of balancing of terror, we come in at number two, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Morphing from what was going to be Star Trek Phase 2, Next Generation comes in with the first bald headed captain. For most Trekkies, the Next Generation crew is their legendary Star Trek crew, their legendary pan ultimate of Star Trek crews, especially when you take into account people like Worf and Data. It gives us another one of the most unique and elegant and most beautifully sexy designed starships in the Enterprise D. Yes, people. Gave us the idea and showed a starship separating. Brought in so many new legendary species like the Betas is, man, the Cardassians, the Bajorans, and one of the most legendary of Star Trek villains, the Borg. This series continued with the idea that Earth was a utopia and that it was a paradise, but it is the series where the first cracks are starting to form in that. Now, we gotta, of course, give an honorable mention, man. If I'm talking about fan productions, people who have love of Star Trek in their heart, how could I not include this way high on the list? The Orville by the great Seth MacFarlane. Look, everybody already knows that Seth MacFarlane wanted to buy the rights of Star Trek when it was down and dirty. But they messed up and gave it to Bad Robot and J.J. Abrams. So what would any good Trekkie who's been a Trekkie ever since, man, you can see videos of him being a Trekkie, acting out Trekkiness in Trekkie on video ever since he was a little teenager. What else would a Trekkie decide to do? Hey, check it out. I got a lot of money. I'm just going to make me a love of Star Trek series on my own. And that, people, was the Orville. It includes great starship designs, Star Trek at heart, based pretty much on the Next Generation. Love of the Star Trek type stories, but blending in, of course, the humor and everything that Seth MacFarlane is known for. Super memorable crew. Expect, man, like everybody is memorable. Like everybody is memorable. Like any other Star Trek or well written Star Trek series, man, a wide spectrum of episodes from the humorous all the way up to the dark and heart wrenching and emotional, especially the one with the identity with the little girl. So, you guys already know. If anybody is a canon knight, people who watch my particular videos, you already know what my all time favorite Star Trek series is. And I am so glad it has been getting the love of late that it did not get at all when it first came out. This series got so much hate, man, when it premiered, when people heard about it, everything, man. It was like, I considered it the black sheep of the Star Trek community when it came out. When it came out, I loved it. I seen so much of me in the main character. So, at number one, the long awaited Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This was another one of those groundbreaking series, man, based on the writings of Ira Stephen Bear, the first Star Trek series to feature the captain as a black guy. A Bajoran first officer, man, a Trill science officer, a augment doctor. Look, Chief O'Brien, a link from the Next Generation, as the chief of operations, or you consider him the chief engineer of a space station, Terra Nor, now called Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine's examination of religion and science, the Dominion War, founders, man, like all of the new species that came from the Gamma Quadrant. They expanded on Trill culture. They expanded even more so than the next generation on Cleon culture, Bajoran culture, Cardassian culture, Section 31, the Marquis, and my favorite of all starships ever put to anything. I don't care what it is, it will never trump this starship to me, and that is the USS Defiant. If the next generation and TOS shows Starfleet and a Federation at its best, that Earth and humanity was a utopia filled with angels and all that kind of stuff, Deep Space Nine shattered that all out. It was the first series also that had an overall arc. Look, everything about Deep Space Nine focused on the interpersonal, how each person handled their relationships with each other. He had one of the best characters, Garrick. He had one of the best villains, man, Ducat. Everything was just so well written and executed in this series that it to this day hails as my favorite of all Star Trek series. So, anyway, I think that that would be a more accurate depiction of the top series of Star Trek, ranked from worst to best, with a little bit as to why um, each one of them is where they are, what I liked about them and what I did not like about them. And again, Discovery will always be at the bottom of that list. I don't care. Discovery will always be, I don't care if you include short treks. Star Trek Discovery will always be at the bottom of he will always be standing in the corner facing the wall. That's the Discovery right there for me. So, do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree with the list? Put it in the comments. Let me know what you guys thought. And as always, man, peace, recycle, and save the whales. You guys be cool.